Marcus Williams was just picking up his 12-year-old son from school when a routine traffic stop changed their lives forever. What started as a simple drive home became a 5-year legal battle that exposed deep-rooted issues in law enforcement and sparked a community movement for justice. This is the true story of one father's courage to fight back against a system designed to silence him, and how his pursuit of justice became a beacon of hope for others facing similar struggles. Warning: this story contains accounts of police misconduct and racial profiling that some viewers may find disturbing. The Long Way Home: A Father's Fight for Justice. An ordinary Tuesday. Marcus Williams adjusted his tie as he walked through the sliding doors of Jefferson Elementary School at 3:15 p.m. sharp, just like he had every Tuesday for the past 3 years. As a senior financial advisor at Pinnacle Investment Group, Marcus could have easily afforded after-school care for his 12-year-old son Jamal, but Tuesdays were their special time together. "Dad!" Jamal's voice cut through the chaos of children streaming out of the building, his backpack bouncing as he ran toward his father. The boy's face lit up with the same smile that reminded Marcus so much of his late wife, Angela, who had passed from cancer 2 years earlier. "Ready for our adventure, little man?" Marcus asked, ruffling his son's freshly cut hair. Their Tuesday tradition was simple but meaningful. They'd drive the long way home through Riverside Park, stop for ice cream at Johnson's Creamery, and Jamal would tell his father about his day while they shared a banana split. Marcus's 2018 BMW 5 Series was parked in the designated pickup area, clean and well-maintained like everything else in his carefully ordered life. As a black man who had climbed from poverty in Detroit to success in suburban Atlanta, Marcus knew that perception mattered. He dressed impeccably, spoke clearly, and made sure his car registration and insurance were always current. He had taught Jamal these same principles of preparation and excellence. "How was the math test?" Marcus asked as they pulled away from the school, classical music playing softly from the premium sound system. "I think I aced it," Jamal replied, buckling his seatbelt. "Mrs. Henderson said I might skip ahead to advanced math next year." Pride swelled in Marcus's chest. Despite losing his mother, Jamal was thriving academically and emotionally. The boy had his father's determination and his mother's gentle spirit. As they drove through their affluent neighborhood of Brookhaven, Marcus felt grateful for the life he had built through 17 years of grueling work, from community college at night while working 2 jobs, to his MBA from Georgia Tech, to finally breaking into the predominantly white world of high finance. The stop. The red and blue lights appeared in Marcus's rearview mirror as they turned onto Peachtree Road, just 2 miles from Riverside Park. His stomach immediately tightened, a learned response from growing up in Detroit, where police encounters rarely ended well for black men, regardless of their innocence. "Stay calm, Jamal," Marcus said quietly, pulling over to the shoulder with his emergency flashers on. "Keep your hands visible and don't make any sudden movements." "But why, Dad? We didn't do anything wrong," Jamal asked, his voice small and confused. "Sometimes that doesn't matter, son." Officer Bradley Morrison approached the driver's side window with his hand resting casually on his service weapon. At 28 years old, Morrison was a 5-year veteran of the Brookhaven Police Department with a reputation for aggressive enforcement, particularly in traffic stops involving black drivers. His partner, Officer Jennifer Walsh, remained by the patrol car. "License and registration," Morrison demanded without introduction or explanation for the stop. "Of course, officer," Marcus replied calmly, reaching slowly for his wallet. "May I ask why you stopped us?" "I'll ask the questions," Morrison snapped. "Hands where I can see them." Marcus carefully retrieved his license and registration, his movements deliberate and slow. His hands trembled slightly, not from fear of what he had done, but from fear of what might happen regardless of his innocence. Officer Morrison examined the documents with unusual scrutiny, walking back to his patrol car to run the information. Marcus's record was spotless, no criminal history, not even a parking ticket in the past 5 years. But Morrison took nearly 15 minutes before returning. "Step out of the vehicle," Morrison ordered. "Sir, may I ask what this is about?" "I was driving the speed limit. I have current registration." "Step out of the vehicle now." Jamal began to cry softly in the passenger seat as his father complied with the order, his hands raised slightly to show he posed no threat. "Dad, I'm scared," Jamal whispered. "It's okay, son. Stay in your seat," Marcus said, trying to keep his voice steady for his child's sake while his own heart raced. Escalation. What happened next was captured on 3 different cameras. Officer Walsh's body camera, a dashboard camera from the patrol car, and most crucially by 18-year-old Deshaun Jackson, who was walking home from basketball practice and began recording when he heard the shouting. "I smell marijuana," Officer Morrison announced, though Marcus had never used drugs in his life and no marijuana was present in the vehicle. "Officer, I don't use drugs. I'm a financial advisor, and I have to pass regular background checks for my job. You're welcome to search my car." "But, oh, I will search your car," Morrison interrupted. "And I'm going to search you too. Turn around and put your hands on the vehicle." As Marcus complied, Morrison conducted what could only be described as an aggressive, humiliating pat-down in full view of his terrified son and passing traffic. The officer's hands lingered and pressed far beyond what was necessary for a weapons check, clearly intended to intimidate and dehumanize. "Please, my son is watching," Marcus said quietly. "Can we handle this with some dignity?" "Shut up," Morrison responded, pushing Marcus harder against the car. "Drug dealers don't get to make demands. I'm not a drug dealer. I'm a licensed financial advisor. My business cards are in my wallet." "Yeah, that's what they all say." Meanwhile, Officer Walsh had approached the passenger side and was questioning 12-year-old Jamal through the window, demanding to know if his father had drugs in the car and making the child increasingly hysterical. "My daddy doesn't do drugs," Jamal sobbed. "He's a good person. Please don't hurt him." The searches of both Marcus and his vehicle revealed nothing illegal, not even an unpaid parking ticket. But Morrison wasn't finished. The breaking point. "I'm calling for a K-9 unit," Morrison announced, apparently unwilling to accept that his unfounded suspicions were wrong. "Officer, we've been here for 45 minutes. You've searched me and my car. You found nothing because there's nothing to find. My son has a tutoring session at 5 p.m. Can we please?" "You'll leave when I say you can leave," Morrison cut him off. This was the moment captured most clearly on Deshaun Jackson's cell phone video. Marcus Williams, a successful businessman in a $60,000 suit, being handcuffed without cause while his 12-year-old son screamed in terror from the passenger seat of their legally parked, properly registered vehicle. "I'm placing you under arrest for resisting arrest and obstruction of justice," Morrison announced. "Resisting arrest?" Marcus asked incredulously. "I've complied with every request. I haven't resisted anything. You argued with me. That's resisting." The K-9 unit arrived 20 minutes later and found nothing. No drugs, no contraband, no evidence of any crime. But Marcus was already on his way to jail, and Jamal was left sobbing on the curb until Marcus's neighbor, Dr. Patricia Henderson, a white woman who had witnessed the end of the encounter, arrived to pick him up. The system responds. The Brookhaven Police Department's initial response was swift and predictable. Officer Morrison filed a report claiming that Marcus Williams had been agitated and uncooperative during a routine traffic stop for expired registration, though the registration was current through the following year. The report made no mention of the extensive search, the handcuffs, or the child's distress. Marcus spent 18 hours in jail before posting bond on charges of resisting arrest, obstruction of justice, and, most absurdly, child endangerment for exposing his minor child to a dangerous situation. The local news initially picked up the story as a standard police blotter item. Brookhaven man arrested during traffic stop. It might have ended there, forgotten like thousands of similar encounters, if not for Deshaun Jackson's video and Marcus's decision to fight back. "They think they can do this because they assume we'll just accept it," Marcus told his attorney, Sarah Chun, a civil rights lawyer who took his case after seeing the viral video. "But I have resources and I have a platform. If they can do this to me, a man with no criminal record, a good job, and a clean car, they can do it to anybody." The video told the story the police report tried to hide. Within a week, it had been viewed over 2 million times on social media, shared by celebrities, and picked up by national news outlets. The hashtag #JustDrivingHome began trending as other Black parents shared their own experiences with racially motivated traffic stops. The community awakens. The first rally at Brookhaven City Hall drew 300 people. The second drew 2,000. By the third week, the protests had spread to 5 other Atlanta suburbs, led by a coalition of parents who refused to accept that their children might suffer the same trauma Jamal had experienced. Dr. Michael Roberts, a psychology professor at Emory University, began studying the psychological impact of police encounters on Black children. His research, sparked by Marcus's case, would later show that witnessing a parent's humiliation by police creates lasting trauma comparable to other forms of childhood abuse. Jamal hasn't been the same since that day, Marcus revealed during a community forum 6 weeks after the incident. He has nightmares. He flinches when he sees police cars. He asked me if we should move to a different country where Daddy won't get arrested for driving. The admission brought many in the audience to tears, including several white parents who admitted they had never considered how their own children would process such an encounter differently. But the community response wasn't universally supportive. Marcus received death threats through social media and anonymous letters at his office. Someone spray-painted racial slurs on his garage door. His employer, Pinnacle Investment Group, initially stood by him but eventually suggested he take an extended leave of absence as the controversy became a distraction for clients. Legal battles and system resistance. District Attorney Rebecca Martinez initially stood behind the officers, stating that the criminal charges against Mr. Williams are supported by the evidence and will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. But as more evidence emerged, including the body camera footage that contradicted Morrison's report in multiple places, cracks began to show in the official narrative. The footage revealed that Morrison had lied about the reason for the stop. Marcus's registration was current. About Marcus's behavior, he was consistently respectful. And about the discovery of potential evidence, there was none. Most damaging was audio from Officer Walsh's body camera that captured Morrison saying, "Let's see if this uppity, racial slur learns his place," just before approaching the vehicle. Words that were somehow omitted from the official transcripts. Sarah Chin filed a federal civil rights lawsuit against the Brookhaven Police Department, seeking not just monetary damages but systemic reforms including mandatory bias training, revised traffic stop procedures, and independent oversight of complaints against officers. The case garnered national attention when renowned civil rights attorney Benjamin Crump agreed to serve as co-counsel, calling it a textbook example of driving while Black in America. The trial that changed everything. Officer Morrison's criminal trial began 8 months after the initial encounter. By then, Internal Affairs had discovered that Morrison had a pattern of disproportionately stopping Black drivers. They represented 78% of his traffic stops despite making up only 23% of Brookhaven's population. Marcus took the stand on a Tuesday, exactly 1 year after the original incident. Wearing the same suit he'd worn that day, he recounted the encounter with quiet dignity, his voice breaking only when describing his son's terror. "I kept thinking about my father," Marcus testified. "He was a factory worker in Detroit who taught me that if I worked hard, dressed well, and followed the rules, I could earn respect in America. But in that moment, with my son watching me be humiliated for no reason other than the color of my skin, I realized that all the success in the world couldn't protect us from this." The prosecution painted Marcus as an entitled man who couldn't accept lawful police authority. But Deshaun Jackson's video spoke louder than any words. Officer Morrison was convicted of civil rights violations and sentenced to 2 years in federal prison. Officer Walsh, who had questioned young Jamal inappropriately, received probation and mandatory retraining. But the criminal convictions were just the beginning. Systemic change. The federal civil rights lawsuit against Brookhaven resulted in a $2.3 million settlement and a consent decree requiring sweeping reforms to police practices. The settlement was less important to Marcus than the changes it mandated. All traffic stops must be recorded on body cameras. Officers must state the reason for a stop before requesting documentation. Searches require articulable probable cause, not mere suspicion. Children present during traffic stops must be treated with special care. Annual bias training became mandatory for all officers. An independent civilian oversight board was established. Perhaps most significantly, the Marcus Williams Protocol was adopted by police departments in 12 other cities, establishing clear guidelines for respectful, non-discriminatory traffic enforcement. Marcus donated his portion of the settlement to establish the Angela Williams Foundation for Justice Reform, named after his late wife. The foundation provides legal assistance to families facing police misconduct and funds research into the psychological effects of racial profiling on children. Healing and advocacy. 2 years after the incident, Marcus had become an unlikely activist, speaking at conferences and congressional hearings about police reform. His measured, professional approach helped him reach audiences who might have dismissed more confrontational activists. "I never wanted to be the face of this movement," he said during a TED Talk that was viewed over 5 million times. "I just wanted to take my son for ice cream. But when the system fails you so completely, silence becomes complicity." Jamal, now 14, had begun healing with the help of Dr. Roberts and other trauma specialists. He started speaking at youth forums about his experience, helping other children who had witnessed similar encounters. "My dad taught me that courage isn't about not being afraid," Jamal said during one presentation. "It's about doing what's right even when you're terrified." The father-son duo began traveling together to communities where police reform was being debated, sharing their story and advocating for change. Their Tuesday ice cream tradition continued, but now it often included discussions about justice, equality, and the work still to be done. Ripple effects. Marcus's case inspired similar lawsuits across the country. The legal precedent established by his victory made it easier for other families to challenge discriminatory policing practices. Within 3 years, 17 officers in 6 states had been convicted of civil rights violations in cases that cited the Williams precedent. Dr. Roberts' research, initially inspired by Jamal's trauma, led to new protocols for how police interact with children during traffic stops. His work showed that children who witness their parents being treated with dignity during police encounters develop healthier attitudes toward law enforcement and civic engagement. The Brookhaven Police Department, under new leadership, became a model for community policing reform. Crime rates remained stable while complaints against officers dropped by 73%. The department began recruiting more officers of color and partnering with community organizations to rebuild trust. But progress wasn't universal. Marcus received a letter from a mother in Mississippi whose son had experienced a similar encounter but lacked the resources to fight back. Another family in Arizona shared their story of a traffic stop that ended with a father's death, a reminder that not every story has a positive ending. Legacy and ongoing work. 5 years after that ordinary Tuesday afternoon, Marcus Williams had returned to financial advising part-time while dedicating most of his energy to the Angela Williams Foundation. The organization had helped dozens of families challenge police misconduct and funded research that was changing how law enforcement agencies across the country approached traffic stops. Jamal, now 17 and college-bound, had become a powerful advocate in his own right. His essay about the incident, titled "The Day I Learned That Good Isn't Good Enough," won a national writing competition and was read into the congressional record during debates over federal police reform legislation. "My father didn't just fight for us," Jamal wrote. "He fought for every black child who shouldn't have to fear that their parent might not come home from a simple errand. He fought for every parent who wants their child to believe that America's promise of equal justice applies to them too." The original Deshaun Jackson video, which had started everything, was now part of a Smithsonian exhibition on civil rights in the digital age. Deshaun, who had gone on to study journalism at Howard University, credited that moment with shaping his career choice. "I realized that sometimes the most important thing you can do is witness," Deshaun said. "And sometimes bearing witness means being willing to act." Reflection and redemption. Officer Morrison was released from federal prison after serving 18 months. He issued a public apology that many found inadequate, but Marcus chose to meet with him privately, a decision that surprised even his closest advisors. "I needed to see if he understood what he had done," Marcus later explained. "Not just to me, but to my son, to our community, to the ideal of justice itself." The meeting, held in a stark conference room at the Civil Rights Organization's offices, lasted 2 hours. Morrison expressed what seemed like genuine remorse, admitting that his training and the culture of the department had taught him to view black men as threats rather than citizens. "I can't undo what I did," Morrison said, "but I want to spend the rest of my life making sure other officers don't make the same mistakes." Marcus didn't forgive Morrison that day. Forgiveness would come later, slowly, as part of his own healing process. But he did agree to work with the former officer on a training program for police departments, combining Morrison's insights into problematic police culture with Marcus's experience as a victim of that culture. The next generation. The Angela Williams Foundation's youth program had grown to serve over 200 young people who had experienced trauma from police encounters. Led by licensed therapists and peer counselors, the program helped children process their experiences while teaching them about their rights and the legal system. Marcus often told the young participants about his conversation with Jamal the night after Morrison's sentencing. "Dad, are you happy that the police officer is going to jail?" Jamal had asked. "No, son, I'm not happy about any of this, but I am hopeful." "Hopeful about what?" "That maybe the next little boy who gets pulled over with his father won't have to be as scared as you were." The Foundation's research had documented a troubling pattern. Children who witnessed discriminatory police encounters were more likely to develop anxiety, depression, and distrust of authority figures. But children whose families successfully challenged such encounters showed remarkable resilience and often became advocates for justice themselves. Dr. Roberts's longitudinal study of families affected by racially motivated police encounters had become required reading in psychology programs across the country. His work demonstrated that while trauma from such encounters could last generations, so could the healing that came from successful resistance to injustice. Epilogue: The Long Road Home. 7 years after that life-changing Tuesday, Marcus Williams still drove the long way home through Riverside Park when picking up children from the Foundation's after-school program. But now he was often accompanied by other parents, other children, and other stories of injustice transformed into action. The ice cream shop, Johnson's Creamery, had become an unofficial meeting place for families involved in the Foundation's work. The owner, Mrs. Johnson, whose own grandson had experienced a troubling police encounter, donated 10% of her profits to the Foundation and kept photos of all the children they had helped on the shop's wall of hope. Marcus's BMW had been replaced with a more modest sedan, the settlement money having gone entirely to the Foundation and to Jamal's college fund. But he still maintained the same standards of excellence and preparation that had been instilled in him since childhood, not out of fear, but out of pride. Jamal was now a freshman at Morehouse College, majoring in criminal justice and planning to attend law school. His application essay began with a simple sentence. "When I was 12 years old, I learned that being good isn't enough. You have to be brave." The weekly phone calls between father and son often included updates on the Foundation's work, discussions about current events, and plans for their continued advocacy. Their relationship, strengthened by shared trauma and common purpose, had become a model for how families could turn pain into power. On a recent Tuesday, Marcus was driving home from the Foundation's offices when he was pulled over for a broken taillight. The officer was young, black, and professional. He explained the reason for the stop, asked for documentation politely, and issued a warning rather than a ticket. "Thank you for your courtesy, officer," Marcus said as the encounter concluded. "Thank you for your advocacy, Mr. Williams," the officer replied. "I learned about the Marcus Williams protocol in the academy. It made me a better officer." As Marcus drove away, he thought about that ordinary Tuesday 7 years earlier when he had simply wanted to buy his son ice cream. The road home had been longer and more difficult than he could have imagined, but it had led not just to personal healing, but to systemic change that would protect countless other families. The fight wasn't over. Marcus knew that racism and injustice were too deeply rooted to be eliminated by a single lawsuit or even 1,000. But progress was possible, change was real, and hope was justified. That evening, Marcus called Jamal at college to tell him about the traffic stop and the young officer's words. "Dad," Jamal said after hearing the story, "remember what you used to tell me about the long way home? That sometimes the scenic route is worth taking, even if it takes more time. I think our whole family has been taking the scenic route, Jamal said. And I'm proud of the view we're seeing now. Outside Marcus's window, the sun was setting over Atlanta, painting the sky in shades of gold and purple. Somewhere in the city, other families were driving home from school, work, and activities. Most would arrive safely without incident, as it should be for everyone. But for those who wouldn't, for those who would face the same injustice he and Jamal had experienced, there was now a foundation, a protocol, a precedent, and a community ready to stand up and fight back. The long way home had become a path that others could follow toward justice.